He has.
He has.
Oh, I use word.
He has seen some.
All right.
And all this is only 18. Oh, but that's not.
This is. Why is that like
We have
that?
girls. The door has only boy. No girl.
That makes it worse.
They
That should make it better.
We're gonna have 7 days.
5, 4.
7 days.
2 boys.
Yeah, 1
She's gonna
second.
try more because they're gonna, usually when they have 2
That
boys.
made it worse.
And then it's-
Sister has two
Hang on,
boys.
It was fine before.
Just
Just 1
2 girls.
second.
Takes a while. And then they're never gonna-
The shidduch prices. There's too many boys.
They said it was the opposite, though.
Yeah, too many boys in Moscow. Wait, maybe you're right. Yeah.
Crazy how, like, as a society, we went from like,
Oh, that's better.
because they were talking about it yesterday at the shiur. Actually, don't know who's here, but they were talking about how in the olden days, if you didn't have a dowry as a woman, you're not going to get married. You know,
Mhm.
so we, as a society, we went from that to like, that has now changed.
Definitely, but like a person that I know. Like a-
You're like this. I just move this.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Okay, I think we are ready to begin. So we're here to talk, we're here to learn, we're here to discuss. What are we talking about? What are we discussing? What are we dealing with? That is a wonderful question. I appreciate you asked. We're here to discuss what is life, what is everything all about. And as we spoke about last week, we said that the Tanya started off as a booklet where it started off as pamphlets, and then eventually it got bigger and bigger. They started being spread around to the point where then eventually it was actually put into a book. And the Alter Rebbe explains that the reason for having the book is in order that everyone should be able to know what's going on, how things are going on. The Alter Rebbe really wanted to be able to spend as much time as he could with everybody. The problem is when there's too many people, you cannot spend time with everybody. So he wrote it in a book, and he says in this book, this is everything you need in order to be able to teach us how we can serve Hashem properly. And he says that it's based on a question. There is a question which is that it's based on a verse, but it explains all the often asked questions that everybody has. And he says, especially Moshe Rabbeinu says, Kikari Veilacha, that the idea of the Tanya is in order to explain to us how we should serve Hashem properly. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, Kikari Veilacha hadavar ma'od beficha v'vavcha la'asata. That he says, don't think that the Torah is across the sea, that you're going to say, oh, how can I get to it? Don't think it's up in heaven and you're going to have to climb, that we're going to have to go all the way. No, it's very close. It's very easy. There's no problem for us to be able to serve Hashem and to get close to Hashem. And we said, beficha uvevavcha la'asasa. Beficha, with your mouth, that refers to the prayer. La'asasa is to do. That's the action. It's the deed. It's the mitzvahs. Uvevavcha is in our heart. That even our heart needs to be able to serve Hashem. The problem is that sometimes our heart.
Who said it?
This is what it says in the pasuk in the Sefer Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing is the Uvavavcha part.
Who said it again?
Uvavavcha part says that even in your heart, that he says that our heart wants to do as well. The problem is that sometimes we have a look at our heart and we see that our heart doesn't necessarily cooperate with us and say that it agrees that it wants to do it. So what we have to understand first is, who are we? What's our relationship to Hashem? So of course, that mitzvahs are a connection that we have with Hashem, but mitzvahs are only tools in order to be able to serve Hashem. Primarily, our primary service of Hashem is avodah shebalev, to be able to serve Hashem with our heart. So what we need to have is we need our heart, we need our minds in the Vayelech probably. We need our heart and our mind to be able to work in sync. We have to work out what's the real me, what's the real you, what is it? Is it actions that's real? Is it the feelings that are real? Is it what we do? Is it what we are? All of these things are the type of stuff that we need to try and work out over here. So the Tanya is basically telling us that we're able to. It's easy. It's a possibility. The problem is we sometimes see that it's not that. And so what we're going to discuss now is we're going to try and discuss who are we? What are we? What are the tools that we have in order to be able, it's going to be mitzvah, in order to be able to serve Hashem? So the Alter Rebbe says at the beginning, at the beginning, as we said before, people would always go in and ask Alter Rebbe, we need advice, we need help, what can we do? And the Alter Rebbe wrote the book. And in the book, the introduction, Alter Rebbe says, it's very nice to be able to, it's very nice to be able to try and focus on others and deal with others and go rely on others and speak to people. But when you write in a book, it makes it, firstly, when it's in a book, it's much more defined because it has to be, right? You can, when you say something versus writing, when you write, you have to distill your thoughts. And also a book, you can look over it again and again and again. There's a story of the Baal Shem Tov that the Baal Shem Tov came and met somebody and he asked him a question in learning, and the guy gave him an answer. So he asked him another question. The guy's Baal Shem Tov gave an answer, and the guy said, "Thank you very much. It's just a great answer." Baal Shem Tov said, "Yeah, but wait, I have a question on this." Okay, great. What's the question? So Baal Shem Tov gave a question on his answer. And the guy's like, "Oh wow, you're right. Now your answer doesn't make sense." So Baal Shem Tov gave another answer. Oh, now it makes sense, and went back a whole bunch of times. The idea is that they're going back and forth. When you want to distill something, when you ask questions, you're able to get to the answer. You can get to a much more distilled answer through questions based on just saying, "Oh, it probably is like this." There's another story with there was a Hasidic master. His name was the Rachmas Rivka Rebbe, and he came from Europe. He came to America. He brought his son to visit the Rebbe. This is probably in the 40s, I believe, late 40s, early 50s, and the Rebbe asked the son, "So what are you learning?" And the son said, "Oh, this is the Talmud. This is the piece of Talmud I'm learning." So he said, "Okay, great. I have a question for you." And he asked a question which is a very common question that a lot of the commentaries ask on this specific piece of the Talmud. And so this guy's son was very proud of himself. And he said, "I have an answer." And he gave the answer. And the Rebbe said, "That's a beautiful answer, but I have a question for you." And the Rebbe asked him a question on his answer. And the guy was stumped. He said, I don't know the answer. And the Rebbe said, "Let me tell you. According to Nigla the Torah, the way of study that is used with learning Talmud, you will never be able to find an answer to this question that I just asked you, because it doesn't have an answer in that mind frame of learning. However, according to Chassidus, there is an answer." And the Rebbe gave him the answer. And the Rebbe said it's very important to realize that the Torah is really, there's two parts of the Torah. There's a big Torah, and you need both parts. You can't just have part A without part B or part B without part A. Really, it's Torah Achat, it's one Torah, all intertwined, and we need both parts in order to be able to really understand. So therefore, as we said, asking questions is the way it goes, and the Tanya starts off with asking questions. And the Tanya says, the reason it's called Tanya, we talked about this last week, is not just because that's the first word in the book, but also it comes from the word Eitan. If you take the letters of Taf Nun Yud Aleph and switch it around, it comes from the Eitan. Eitan means ancient. It also means strong, that we get our strength from not just what we have today, but going on the shoulders of all the people of the generations of the past.
So why did they turn the Tanya instead of call it Eitan?
Oh, because from the quote of the Talmud says the word Eitan, says the word Tanya. So Tanya means we learned in a Brisa. Brisa is similar to Mishnah, but Mishnah was written down and the Brisa was not written down. Yeah, it's part of Torah Sheba'al Peh, but it's sort of the cousin or the sister of the Mishnah. So it came before the Talmud. The Talmud says we learned in a Brisa. The Brisa says we learned that before a person comes down, we make him promise, you have to be a tzaddik. And even if the whole world tells you that you're wicked, take it back. Even if the whole world tells you, you have to be a tzaddik. And we made a promise before we were born that we're going to be a tzaddik. And then it continues, it says, even if the whole world tells you, tzaddik ata, you're a tzaddik, you should be in your eyes as if you're not a tzaddik, it's just if you're a Rasha. So what do you mean? Like, how could you be thinking about yourself as you're bad? There's going to be only two options that's going to happen. Either I'm going to say, I don't care, or I'm going to get depressed and say, there's no point. If I'm not good anyways, what's the point? Right? So that's one of the questions that the Alter Rebbe asks. And the Alter Rebbe says, I'm going to explain all this. So the Alter Rebbe starts off by saying there are three types of categories of people in general. You have a tzaddik, you have a rasha, and a benoni. And a benoni. Tzaddik, we say, is the righteous person. A rasha, we usually say, is the wicked person. And a benoni is somewhere in between, the average guy. As we said, the English, there's an English translation of the Tanya where it says the book of averages, right?
Intermediate.
The practical Tanya is called the book of
In-betweeners.
in-betweeners.
Yeah.
The in-betweeners. So Tanya is going to speak about the in-betweeners. Now, seemingly, it's based on, what's it based on? It's based on percentage, right? A tzaddik is someone who has mostly good stuff. The wicked guy, the rasha, is a guy who has mostly bad stuff. And the benoni is that, he's like 50-50. So that's a very basic, I don't want to use the word primitive, but sort of primitive also way of understanding what is a tzaddik, what is a rasha. But the Talmud also actually mentions that there's 5 types. There's a tzaddik v'tovlo, tzaddik v'ralo. And based on our scale, what does it mean, tzaddik v'ralo? He's a tzaddik, he's good, but there's bad to him. That means he has bad in this world. Why? Because Hashem says there's a person who's pretty much, he's 80, 90, 95% good. He has a little bit of not good. So which is worth more? Goodness in this world or goodness in the world to come? Obviously, goodness in the Olam Haba is better. So Hashem says, I'm going to give it, there's a little bit of washing machine, cleansing to do down here. So a couple of things that were negative. That way, when it comes to Olam Haba, everything's going to be perfect. Now, interesting, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, one moment in the world to come is better than this whole world, than our entire life in this world. But on the flip side, one moment in this world is better than the entire world to come. So how does that work? Because the world to come, Olam Haba, is so great and such a powerful, overpowering godly energy, that there's nothing in this world which can compare. So even being there for a moment is more valuable than this whole world.
So we shouldn't bother in this.
Oh.
We shouldn't bother with Olam Hazeh.
We should only go Olam Haba, 100%. So that's why it says the flip side, that one moment in this world is better than the whole Olam Haba. How does that work? What's the point of the world? The point of us being in this world is to change the world and make the world godly. If that's the point of us being in this world, you can't do that in Olam Haba. In fact, there's a in Tanakh, there's a pasuk, there's a verse that says, Hashem says there's going to be mahalchim ben ha'omdim. There's going to be walkers among the stationary. And it's speaking about people versus angels. What's the difference? Because angels are created. They're like robots. They create on a certain level, and they stay on that level. They do not change. They can never change. Hello. So angels will never change. However, people can change. We change ourselves and we change our surroundings. So that's why this world is very important, and we want to stay here as long as we can. So you have the both sides of it. So that would be a tzaddik v'rala. However, the Zohar says, what's a tzaddik v'rala? What's a tzaddik and is bad to him? Means that his bad is leaning to good. That he's in control. He owns the bad. But what does that mean? It's either good or it's bad. Like in a personality, you can have this, he's pretty good, especially when teachers have to write report cards, right? It's like, has a lot of potential. So when you're talking about personality, yeah, almost good, mostly good, basically good. But in action, what I did, was it good or was it not good? You can't have it partially good. Either it's good or it's not good. So if we're judged based on our behaviors, how does it work where you can have that I'm good, but I'm not good, or I'm mostly good, it's partially towards good? So therefore the Zohar makes us forces us to rethink our definitions. What is a tzaddik and what is a rasha and what's the benoni? It's not what you do, but it has to be what you are. What you are. It's not what you do, it's what you are. Therefore, a tzaddik is disposed only to good. The Russia has the disposition to bad, and the Beinoni is sort of in between. So an average makes sense. It's based on what force governs you, right? So the Yetzer Hara, so the tzaddik has a Yetzer Hara, but he has no desire to sin. Sorry, I take that back. The tzaddik has no Yetzer Hara, and therefore has no desire to sin. The Rasha desires to sin and does sin. That's the wicked guy. And the Beinoni, the average guy, desires to sin, but doesn't act on it. So again, a tzaddik has no desire to sin. The Rasha desires to sin and does. The Beinoni desires to sin, but doesn't act on it. So based on this is a whole different understanding of what's a tzaddik and what's a Rasha, what's a Beinoni. Rabbi Hillel Paritcher was a very big Hasidic master, disciple of the Alter Rebbe, and he said that before he came to the Alter Rebbe, he thought he was a tzaddik. He says now that he learned the Tanya and he understands what the concept of a tzaddik and a Beinoni and a Rasha is, he says, halavai a Beinoni. If only I could be a Beinoni, because a Beinoni is pretty high. A Beinoni does not sin at all. There's a desire, but he holds himself back every single time. So the Torah believes that we could be in charge of our actions. And it's all about our character. Which force is going to govern me? Which is going to rule me? How am I going to express myself behaviorally? So is it an all or nothing? The answer is no. It could be compartmentalized. When we get down to chapter 12, we're going to start saying it depends on who you're doing, what you're doing, where you're doing. So this is what we're going to focus on. There's a story that Tanya Chapter was a big chassid in the previous generation. And I believe the Frierdiker Rebbe said on him, it was said about him, and I believe the Frierdiker Rebbe said it, that he's a Beinoni, according to the way Tanya is. Was the Frierdiker Rebbe said it?
There's Tanya and Radats.
The Radats said about him?
I think that
Frierdiker Rebbe said about him and the Radats. So they asked this guy, they said to him, Chach is, I believe, from Yecheskel. And they said to him, how could you be a Beinoni? How's it possible? It's impossible to be like that. He said, it's very simple. If I have a desire or a want to do the wrong thing, how long does that desire take? It takes a moment. So I tell myself, hold off a second. Okay. 1 second plus another second plus another second equals a minute. And minutes equal hours. And hours equal days. And days equal years. So it's not that I'm telling myself, I'm going to be perfect forever. No, right now I'm going to be perfect. Right now that I want to do this thing that I shouldn't do, I'm going to hold myself back. What's going to happen in 5 minutes? I'm not talking about that. I'm not there yet. I'm only going to what I'm talking about now. And right now, I'm going to hold myself back. The Alter Rebbe continues, tells a story about Rabbah. Rabbah was one of the Talmudic masters. And it says that he never stopped learning. He was constantly learning to the point that the Talmud tells us that the angel of death came, it was his time to die. The angel of death was not able to kill him. And therefore, they had to do a whole situation, right? In order that he shouldn't be, to be able to have him stop for a second to learn. And then when he stopped for a second to learn, then they were able to kill him. What's the story, Levi?
something about like fiery horses or something.
Okay. So he said about himself, he said, they were talking about a tzaddik and a Beinoni and a Rasha, the tzaddik, the perfect, the Rasha, the wicked, and the Beinoni, the average guy, the in-betweener. And he said, I am a Beinoni. I'm an average guy. So Abaye, who was his student, said, wait a second, where does that leave us? If you're a Beinoni, if you're the average, there's only one place to go lower than that. And that doesn't work. In fact, he says, the expression Abaye uses, Leshavik marchai l'chalberi, you're not giving any life, leaving life for anybody. Because the Talmud says that Rishonim, wicked, afilu b'chayehem kruyim metim, that even when they're alive, they're called dead, because what type of life do they have? So he says, if you're going to be a Beinoni and we're going to be a Rasha, because that's the only level down, then we're not around, right? It's like the Jew was the old Jew was in an accident, and so the ambulance, the guy, they put him on the stretcher and they try and take care of him, and they said to him, are you comfortable? He says, I make a living. So when you say, we want to be alive, we want to have something. So Abaye says, where does that leave us? Now, obviously, Rabbah was not trying to be humble. He's trying to be honest over here. He's not saying, oh yeah, I'm not really so special. But based on, so how could he say that his average? But based on what we just learned, the way the Zohar explains what a Beinoni is, we see that it's based on the action, right? It's not based on what's going on inside. Action, the action of a Beinoni and the action of a tzaddik is the same thing. The difference is what's going on internally. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he said before he passed away, he told his students, Eini yodea be'ezeh derech molichin oti. I have no idea when I pass away and I go up to heaven, where are they going to send me? Am I going to go to the good side or the negative side? You know what they say? They say you have the staircase to heaven and the highway to hell, right? What's the difference? It tells you a little bit about the anticipated traffic. So he said, I have no idea, but I don't know where I'm going. Now, how's it possible? He was the leader of the Jewish people. He was little, he was 120, just like Moshe Rabbeinu. He said that he, the first 40 years he was a student, the next 40 years he was a teacher, and then the last 40 years of his life, he was leading the Jewish people after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Such a great guy. He says, I don't know. Obviously, hello, you've been living your whole life perfect. You've been doing all the good stuff. What do you mean you don't know? So what he was saying is, I may have killed my Yetzer Hara from my behaviors. I may have killed my Yetzer Hara emotionally. I may have even killed my Yetzer Hara intellectually. But what about subconsciously? Did I kill it from there also? Or do I have a little bit of Yetzer Hara still? So even when he was being so great, he was saying, I'm not sure. So from this level, from these stories, we see that the three levels of a tzaddik, the righteous, the Beinoni, the average, and the rasha, the wicked, is not just behavioral, but their character descriptions of a person, not based on our behaviors. So what happens when we say, oh, somebody's a tzaddik? You know, it says that we have the book of the tzaddikim are the good people, they go straight to heaven. The rasha is the negative guy. So how could it? How does that work? So we say this. It's just a shema mushal. It's just a borrowed term. It's saying that because he's vindicated, and therefore he's sort of like a tzaddik, that he was found the opposite of guilty. He's found righteous, so we call him a tzaddik. But that's what we're talking about from that perspective. But it's not the real terminology of tzaddik. And if that's the case, that a tzaddik is so special, as we said, that tzaddik doesn't have Yetzer Hara. We don't really know a lot of tzaddiks around. So what happened? Where are they? So Talmud says that Hashem saw that there was only going to be a few, so therefore Hashem spread them out. A couple in this generation, a couple in that generation. That way, share the wealth, that everyone should be able to have and enjoy a little bit of having a tzaddik in their times. Who's an example of a tzaddik? So you have an example of a tzaddik would be David HaMelech. David HaMelech said, "V'libi chalal b'kirbi," that my heart is sort of empty inside of me, that I do not have a Yetzer Hara anymore. How? The Talmud says, Ki haroga b'tainis, he killed it with fasting. That because he was constantly doing teshuvah and constantly trying to get closer to Hashem, teshuvah from the word tashuv, to return to Hashem. So therefore he was able to remove his Yetzer Hara from him. So here's an example of somebody who didn't spend his time, and he was going to be on that high level. So, yeah. So once he got to that point, he was able to get rid of his Yetzer Hara, that he didn't have Yetzer Hara anymore.
But he had many
At the beginning, he might have had.
We know from the story.
He might have had a Yetzer Hara at the beginning.
many regression.
However, once he started working on himself, to that point, he ended up becoming like a tzaddik. To the point where he didn't have a Yetzer Hara. Not that he wanted to do the wrong thing and he held himself back, but he brought himself to a point where he didn't even feel like he wanted to do the wrong thing.
So he did the wrong thing and then he chazar b'tshuva.
It's a very hard, it's for another discussion, because the Talmud says, Kol mi shomer sheDavid HaMelech chata eino ela to'eh. You're mistaken. So anyone who says that he sinned is mistaken. So that's a whole, it's for another discussion. But I'm just gonna quote the Talmud over here.
That reminds me of Joe Biden.
So as we get more Kabbalistic, you would think that the more Kabbalistic we get, the more abstract things are going to be. That's the way we ever think about Kabbalah, the Zohar, it's more abstract. But we see over here, it actually becomes more concrete. Because based on the Talmud's terminology, where tzaddik, rasha, the righteous, the wicked, where it's action based, it's all relative. I'm going to be measured against others. I'm a 75, you're a 22, you're a 97. Like we're all being measured against everybody else. However, based on the way we're explaining over here through the Zohar, that what is a tzaddik and a rasha? Thank you. It's based on me. It's based on my passion, based on my battles. There are some people who have no desire to do anything wrong. Some people have a little bit of desire. Some people have a lot of a desire. It really depends. Different people are created different. We have different personal makeups, physical, psychological, emotional, all these things. So some people want to do the wrong thing, and some people just don't care. So what am I based on? It's not based on this. It's based on me. It's not based on everybody else. And that's actually very powerful.
Don't go that.
So what we're going to do now is, now that we discuss and explain what is a tzaddik, what is a rasha, now let's talk a little bit about our souls. We have a godly soul versus an animal soul. And if we think to ourselves, an animal soul, that's an animal, nefesh habahamit. So an animal soul, you would think, is bad. Well, people say, oh, it's an animal, as if it's negative. But what's wrong with being an animal? What do animals do that people are like, oh, such an animal?
Nothing.
They eat, they sleep, they procreate. Most animals are not predators, right?
Yeah.
So what's wrong with being an animal? What's wrong with an animal soul? There shouldn't be anything wrong with it, right?
There isn't.
There isn't anything wrong with it. So what is the animal soul that we have? So, if you have a look at there was a teacher who had his talmidim, the yeshiva students there, and they were at his house, so he was farbringing or something, and then the baby was crying, so he picked up the baby, he brought the baby to the table, and everyone looks at a baby, everyone likes babies. As long as they're not crying, everyone's happy with them. So it's right. You walk onto the plane, sometimes you're the last one on the plane. And whenever you're the last on the plane, everyone gives you those stares. It's not my fault. It's a connecting flight. You walk on with a baby, everyone just looks and smiles at the baby, and you sort of have. So everyone's looking, oh, that's so cute. He asked them, what do you think about the baby? You're always going to say something positive, right? So cute, so precious, oh, looks exactly like you, all these beautiful stuff. So he said, great. He said, but I want to tell you what this baby is. This baby is just I. All it is, all the baby does is thinks about himself. The baby takes and takes and takes, give me food, give me water, put me to sleep, change my diaper. The baby doesn't give. That is the difference. There's a story of there was a goat and a giraffe. And the giraffe is trying to explain to the goat how beautiful it is. Right? The goat's all the way down there. The giraffe has a tall neck and see everything. Sees the mountains, the trees, the cities in the distance. Everything's so great and beautiful. And he tells the goat, you really got to see what I see. The goat's like, whatever. You have your head up high. I see the ground. I see my food. I'm happy. So the giraffe is trying to convince him. Finally, the goat tries to stand up. Can't make it. It's still not high enough. And goes, eventually climbs a tree or whatever it is, finally gets to see. And the giraffe's like, see, don't you see those beautiful mountains over there? And the goat says, well, what's the point? Who cares about it? I can't eat it. So that's the idea of an animal. An animal soul is not bad. It's just selfish. An animal soul is preoccupied with itself versus the godly soul, which is selfless. So if we want to have a look at let's say if you have to characterize the godly soul, the animal soul.
All animals?
Yeah.
Why do you call Caleb?
Kulolev. Okay.
Okay. So does he care only about himself?
Yes.
No, he doesn't.
Yes. So you're going to say, okay, when I was growing up, there was a famous thing. It's called dog on the tucker box. Dog on the tucker box. Because what happened? There was a dog over there, and the dog was there with his master. It was during some thing that went on, some war of some sort or something. And his master said, hang on, wait here, I'll be back. And something happened to the master died. And the dog was there and stayed until it wouldn't leave. I'm here, this is my post, this is what I do. Because the dog has instinctively, dogs are protective. It's not an intellectual, philosophical decision to make. That's the difference. So if we have to
is that emotional, not intellectual. I mean, love and hate are not intellectual emotion. I mean, they're not intellectual
Correct.
decisions, they're
Correct.
emotional decisions. My dog is very emotional.
but not philosophical.
No, it's not philosophical,
Right.
but it's emotional.
So it's more based on personality and there's a word I used before and not nature, your instinct, not instinct. No, it's like your instinct. It's the way you were wired. So they do things based on the way they're wired.
We do things the way we are.
Sometimes we're constantly evolving and changing, and today I'm like this, and tomorrow I'm like that. Animals don't have midlife crises, right? They don't wake up there. Oh my goodness, what am I doing with my life? They're happy. They do their stuff. And even they say, well, there are certain animals that are smart, and when their owner dies and they get depressed. It's not a philosophical depression.
No.
It's an emotional depression.
Yeah,
So that's the difference. An animal, if you want to say the animal soul, we could sort of categorize it down into three. The animal soul is selfish. Because the animal soul is selfish, therefore it's short-sighted. It sees itself and doesn't really see much out of its box.
so how do you define people?
And
that are
okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. And because of that, the animal soul is also always going to be worried. What's going to be happening? What's this person going to do? What's happening? Because I'm always cared about myself. Whereas the godly soul is selfless. It's not worried about me. It's worried about what can I do to help others. Therefore, it's not short-sighted. It's broad-sighted. Sees everything. Looks at the whole picture. And there's no need to worry. Why? Because, okay, in this situation, this might be the issue. But on a broader scale, you're not worried. Well, what's this person going to say to me? Well, if that person's going to look at me, all these different things that we're worried about sort of go away. So the animal soul is sort of like the Russia. The wicked guy, we call a wicked guy, is not bad. He's not a bad person. He just gives in. The Russia, according to the way we're explaining in Tanya,
He's not bad, he's just bad.
he gives in. No, he gives in to temptation. The animal soul isn't bad. The animal soul cares about himself. And since we were created to be Beinonim, we could have both. And we could be both. On one hand, depending on how we're feeling today, we could be animalistic and be selfish and caring about ourselves. And on the other hand, we can also have times where we act with the godly soul, that we're selfless, we care about others. So these are the sort of the two ways that we can look at ourselves. Now, if we want to look at this from a different angle, the Arizal explains that there are three types of souls. The first one is the soul of the flesh. And that's the basic human soul. That's what gives life to the body. It's housed in the blood, and from it comes all the human characteristics. So, what are the human characteristics? We say everything is composed of four elements, right? We're not talking about the 94 or the 118, whatever, the periodic table, right? You know what they say, you can never trust atoms because they make everything up. Sorry, because they make up everything. Or never trust stairs. Why?
They're always up to something.
They're always up to something. So the everything is composed of four elements: Esh, Mayim, Ruach, Afar. Afar. Fire, water, air, and dust. So fire, the characteristic of fire is fire rises. Water descends. Earth is heavy. Earth. What? Water?
Yeah.
Water.
Condensation. Wow.
Well, that's the gas. No.
Okay.
Water descends. Earth is heavy. It resists movement. The earth is here and it just wants to stay here. Unless you push it, it's not going to move. Right? And air will go anywhere or nowhere. It can be blown around or it can just be stagnant. It has no difference where it is, so to speak.
Sorry, I'm thinking about science.
Okay. So these four characteristics are in the human soul as well. How do we see that? Fire represents anger, represents arrogance. These things, they rise, they flare up in the heat of the moment. These are all represented by fire. Water is the pursuit of pleasure. Water flows down, and in general, we find pleasure in things that are below us. Right? There's the 4 levels. We have domem, tzomech, chai, medaber. Domem is not inanimate, it's mineral. Because inanimate means there's no life force, and everything in the world, even a stone, has a life force. It has a godly life force, even if it doesn't seem to be alive. So we'll use the word mineral. You have mineral, then you have vegetation, then you have animal, then you have people. So each level, the people, we get our pleasure and enjoyment from the animals. People and animals both have from the vegetation. People and vegetation both get from the minerals, from the water, from the earth, from the stuff like that. So that's the water. And earth represents laziness, sadness, depression, right? Heaviness comes from earth because it resists movement, doesn't want to move anywhere. And laziness can also be sadness, because sadness is resisting emotional movement. It's a condition. Sadness is where we feel nothing, right? Or you might want to be sad because you want to avoid emotions. Oh, I'm sad right now. I'm not thinking about anything, right? So you don't feel sad. You're sad because you don't feel. So this also comes from the concept of earth. And air, that's boasting, idle talk, cynicism, mocking. Those are some examples of air, because these are forms of avoiding a position. Some people just enjoy going nowhere, right? It's like you don't watch a movie with a message, because then I have to go. Now I have to get inspired and do something. It's easier to just do something, enjoy life without anything, then I don't have to change. So boasting is not a position. Arrogance is a position. Arrogance is, I'm so great. Look what I do A, B, C. I'm arrogant. Boasting is making myself be what I'm not. I'm making claims that I'm not. So that's the idea about boasting. Is also, it's not a position. It's not I have a specific thing. I don't have anything. So that would be the concept of the air. Now, the soul, the animalistic soul that we're talking about, is earthy, and therefore it doesn't have any goodness that's native to its personality. How does it get goodness? The goodness is going to be acquired through effort, through growth, motivated by conviction, which doesn't come by nature. We have to create the goodness. So the soul is very different than the animal spirit, because the animals also have a life force, right? As we said before. And that life force leaves at death. So what's the difference between an animal soul and a people soul? Between the animal soul of an animal, the soul of an animal, or the animal soul of a person? As we said before, the difference is that the human soul has a sense of direction and purpose. We can get philosophical. We can get intellectual. So to simply put it, a soul means to have a sense of purpose and direction. That's sort of what a soul is. We all have what we need in order to achieve what we need to achieve, in order to contribute to the world. We all feel that we have a sense of purpose, we have a sense of mission. And the idea is, what we need to do is we're trying to work out, not to work out if the world has meaning, but to work out what is the meaning of life. Because we cannot survive without a purpose. We need to have a purpose. So that's what the first soul is. The first soul is, it needs to acquire goodness, it needs to acquire purpose, meaning, which is not inherent to it. It's something which it acquires. So that's the first soul, that's the animal soul. Then you have a second soul. And then we're moving from natural goodness to divine goodness. Divine goodness, which is godliness. So you have the righteous people, right? We have positive characteristics, right? There's generosity, there's compassion. We can have those things. And those are good, right? But good is the idea of seeing others more important than myself. That's what real good is. Real good is, it's not about me. It's not the animal soul, which is selfish. We're talking about selfless. So, but if I'm kind, or if I'm loyal, is that not good? Right? In general, would say that those are very good things. However, I could be kind without putting somebody else ahead of me. I'm kind because I feel it makes me feel good. When I help somebody, it makes me feel good. When I help somebody, I can put a check on my list. Oh, good, I helped somebody. Or if I want to be loyal, well, I'm loyal. I don't want to be, but I'll be loyal because if I'm not, think about what's the alternative. Oh, so we could be kind, we could be loyal, we could be doing really good stuff, but it's not really coming from good, because goodness is not about me. Goodness is about others. And here I'm doing these seemingly good stuff, but I'm not doing it for others. I'm doing it for myself.
It's contrary to logical behavior. It's because if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot take care of others.
Correct.
The primary, even in Jewish studies, say in enemy meaning. The first responsibility.
Ucheshani latzmi. What's the next words? Ucheshani latzmi mani. So yes, if I'm not going to stand up for myself, no one's going to take care of me. I need to make sure that I'm taken care of because ultimately I need to take care of myself.
No, it's because if you don't take care of yourself, you don't have the ability to take care of others.
So what you're saying is sort of like on the airplane. When the oxygen masks come down, put your own on before you help somebody else. Because if you don't put yours on, you won't be able to help anybody else.
Because, you know, take the nature, centrifugal force. You hold the rope. If you don't hold it, it does not exist. It's gone.
So
the responsibility, you're the anchor of all the good things that you do. If you don't take care of the anchor, you cannot do anything good.
So I appreciate what you brought up because what you're saying falls exactly in line with what we're saying over here.
Okay.
That naturally, we said the animal soul is not bad. It's natural. Naturally, I'm going to take care of myself. Naturally, I'm going to make sure that I'm taken care of. Survival of the fittest, right? Why don't people want to die? Right? Because we have a natural inborn thing of self-preservation. Therefore, I'm going to try and be safe. I have a fear of doing something which could cause harm because I don't want to harm myself. So that's natural. And that's exactly what we're talking about. The nefesh habahamid, the animal soul, we're calling the animal soul, is this natural thing. I need to take care of myself. But that's not, dogs will also take care of themselves. Animals will also take care of themselves. The concept of being there for others, that's the level.
You can't be for others if you're
Correct.
not there.
If I don't eat, I'm going to die.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that eating is a godly pursuit. I'm eating my delicious steak. It's not godly. I'm doing it. I have to survive. I have to have my steak and I have to have my yes. But that's not the reason I'm here. It's what I need to do, not what I am, not what I want to be. So that's the idea that yes, we could do good, what seems to be good, but we're not doing it for a good purpose. We're not doing it because of good. Doing it good is altruistic. If I'm not doing it for altruistic reasons, it's not necessarily good. It's a good action. It's a great thing I'm doing. But ultimately, good is when I'm doing it for somebody else. Not because I'm not, the part of Tanya that we're probably not going to get to this, that we for sure won't get to this year. The very end of the book of Tanya, there's 5 parts to the book of Tanya. And now we're at the very end. And there's letters that the Alter Rebbe writes. And the Alter Rebbe is writing the difference between Torah study and davening. And he's saying over there, we just learned it in the last few days. I just lost my train of thought.
Davening is better than mitzvah. And
Yeah, but it was on topic of just what I was saying now. Altruism, about I just went blank. Well, I was just saying something right before that. I was telling you about the importance of doing-
Take care of yourself to take care of others.
the ideas.
We're saying that
The idea is that we should be doing things for
Doing it for-
others.
you're not doing it for the few reasons. You're doing it for, you know, at the end of the day, most good things that people do in the world, they're doing it because of themselves. We don't do it because of others. Because ultimately it gives them.
Right, because it makes me feel good.
Absolutely. 99% of the things that people do good to others, they do it for self-gratification.
Correct.
Isn't that nice?
So
It's nice.
99%.
Isn't it nice that we have an internal thing that programs us to feel good when we do things that are
Absolutely.
good for other people?
Absolutely, because otherwise nobody would do anything good.
Yeah, it's nice. It's not a coincidence.
No.
so I don't remember what I was going to say.
Okay. We'll do the next.
Right before I go to sleep.
We'll come back.
So you're right. The question is, what is it? What is propelling me to do the right thing? Is it my nefesh habahamis or my nefesh elokit? Am I doing it because it makes me feel good, or am I doing it because this is what I'm supposed to be doing?
Well, does it really matter? As long as you do good, does
Oh.
it really matter?
About shalei lishma, doing things that shema shalei lishma.
If you do it-
Learning Torah has to be done for the sake of learning Torah. And if you learn Torah not for the sake of learning, not because you'd want to learn Hashem's Torah, but you're doing it for intellectual pursuit, there's a problem. What about if I daven and without intention? So Al-Rebbe explains something very fascinating. He says, if you learn Torah without the intention that it's Hashem's Torah, there's a problem. If you daven without the intention of what you're saying, it's much easier to fix that up, because the reason I was davening to Hashem. That was the whole purpose of what I was doing. So that's what I think. But
They don't understand the word they say.
No, it doesn't matter if they understand.
It's just
That-
they-
Kavanah.
Oh.
The kavanah.
so what happens if I have no kavanah in my davening? By the way, this is a bit off topic, but we'll go in and I'll just answer this briefly. What happens if I daven without kavanah? So the Rebbe explains over there that because what I was doing, yes, it was without kavanah. I didn't understand what I was doing, and I wasn't davening with the right intentions. But because the reason I did it was for Hashem, right? I'm davening to Hashem, but I didn't do it exactly the right way. I'm able to make it up if I daven once within the year. If I'm able to daven that part of davening properly with kavanah, then that sort of schleps all the other all the other times I said that paragraph of davening, it gets schlepped with it and gets brought up. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be all in order, all one davening, that one day you have to sit down and do everything perfect. You can do bit by bits. So today I do one paragraph, tomorrow I do the next paragraph. I'm davening everything. Focus on paragraph A, then I focus on paragraph B. And every time I focus on that paragraph, I bring all the rest of the prayers from the year up together with it. So the idea what we have over here is talking about the idea of being able to do stuff. Why do we do stuff? When do we do stuff? How do we do stuff? Do we do it just because do we do it because this is what I want to do, because it makes me feel good, or do I do it because this is what I'm supposed to do? So in order to sort of recap what we spoke about over here, is we spoke about the tzaddik versus the rasha. We said that a tzaddik and a rasha is not based on a percentage of how many stuff you do, but we say it's not what we do, but it's based on what we are. Because and then we said we have the two souls, right? The Beinoni has this tug of war. Beinoni is not good or bad. It's that we have tendencies of animalism, and we have tendencies of transcendence, right? When I'm going to go and eat, so that could be animalistic. When I'm going to go and help somebody, it depends. Am I doing it because it makes me feel good? Because I can check off another thing. I'm a Boy Scout and I have to go and help somebody. What do they say? The kid comes home late for school, comes half an hour late home. His mother said, "Where were you?" He said, "Oh, I had to help an old lady across the street." She's like, "But a half hour?" He's like, "Yeah, she didn't want to go." So if you're doing it because you have to check off, I did something good. And then we spoke about how the four elements of the fire, water, air, and earth represent the physical natures that make us up. And most importantly, we speak about altruism. And we're discussing about altruism. Can we be altruistic? And Al Rebbe ends off at the end of the chapter something very, very powerful. Al Rebbe ends off at the end of the chapter. He says that because we have the godly soul, and the godly soul, we said, is altruistic, we are able to be altruistic. Now, obviously, for me to say that the godly soul is altruistic is not a big deal. Obviously, it's the godly soul. But what the Alter Rebbe says over here is even the animal soul is able to be altruistic because it's connected to the godly soul. And therefore, we are able to be altruistic, and we're able to be kind to others, not just because we want to be kind. We can come to the point the godly soul, you would think, would be altruistic and focusing only on God. And the animal soul, as we said, is focusing on us. But because there's this connection between them, we can have the animal soul also be altruistic, not just for godly reasons, but the animal soul can also be altruistic Animals will be altruistic for animal reasons, animalistic reasons as well. And if you have you have the concept of gemilut chasadim, going to help somebody. Why would I go help somebody? We have this thing built in us that we want to help. When there was unfortunately, after tragedies, everyone wakes up. But after October 7th, right? The entire Jewish world woke up and said, we need to go help. And everyone's doing fundraisers and going to volunteer and do all this stuff. What happened? It woke up inside them that they're not getting anything back. When they're going to donate to something, they're not getting anything back. So why are they doing it? Because this is what I'm supposed to do. Gemilut Chasadim, it says there are 3 characteristics that represent our people. That one of them is Gomle Chasadim, that we do kindness because kindness is an important thing to do without trying to get anything back. So that is what the Alter Rebbe ends off the chapter of Tanya by saying that we can end off that by saying that we can have this concept of altruism. And next week we're going to speak about the next level. Next week we'll be starting chapter 2. And chapter 2, we're going to speak about a small part of Hashem in the next soul, which is a small part of Hashem. So we have the animal soul, we have the earthly soul, then we have the area where we're trying to get better and good, and we're going to speak about part of the soul, which is, as it says in next week in the Tanya, Chelek Elokam Imal Mamash. It's literally a part of Hashem. It's different than the souls the other souls. The other souls were created, are created beings, and the neshama that we have, which we call the Nefesh Elokit, the godly soul, that is actually a part of Hashem. It's not something that's created, but something that is sort of placed into us. So it's a much higher level. And for more definition, explanation, tune in next week.
Michelle Koff.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Yes,
What chapter of Tanya was this?
this is chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Beautiful.
What
So-
language is the Tanya when we are written?
So
Original.
the Tanya is written in Hebrew. However, sorry, thank you. Not Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh. If there are quotes, the Zohar is written in Aramaic. So if it's a quote from the Zohar, the quote's going to be in Aramaic. The Talmud, yesh v'yesh. So mostly the Talmud is Aramaic as well. Sometimes it's Lashon HaKodesh, but in general it's Aramaic. So again, a quote from there will also be the
So in order to learn it now, and most people do not understand Aramaic.
in order to learn Tanya or Gemara.
Why
So-
was it written in Aramaic?
Aramaic,
Language of the day.
that was the language of the people.
Huh?
It's like if we wrote a book in English now. I mean, sorry, if we wrote a book in Yiddish,
Right. Why was it written in Aramaic?
that was the language of the people,
Where?
where the Jewish people were living at the
Where?
time.
Uh-huh.
The colonizers. What? In Babel.
In Babel,
Yeah,
in Babylon.
yes.
Who wrote it? The Iraqi Jews.
Your grandpa.
Yeah, my grandpa.
Oh, there we go. I see where you're going.
You see,
It was the
after the-
Israeli Jews who moved.
No, because, look, when I look at all these things, I have to make connection with everything. Because you see, the way